Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
This is the podcast where every week we'll review a classic pro wrestling event from a streaming service.
And that classic pro wrestling event could be a pay-per-view. It could be a television special, such as a Saturday night's main event or a Clash of the Champions. It could be a major storyline culminating arena event from the territory days. Basically anything that is not a weekly episode of pro wrestling television.
And every single Thursday we post on our social media what event this week's episode will cover. So make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at WrestleAtRandom. Facebook.com/WrestlingAtRandom also. You can give us a like there. And WrestlingAtRandom.com is the website that has this entire back catalog of podcasts there and all the links to subscribe. So the best way to interact with the show is through our social media, through our Twitter, through our Instagram, through our Facebook. Make sure you send us your feedback, your comments. We love to interact with people there. And we will have a lot to talk about, and we'll probably get a lot of feedback on this one because this was a very historic, well-known show, not for the reasons of past historic shows we've reviewed, like Canadian Stampede from In Your House. No, this is known for being peak WCW in the year 2000.
Yes, I would say that the phrase "working yourself into a shoot" was never more accurate and more apt than it was for one particular moment in this show.
At this point in the year 2000, the stars of the 90s were seen as old and tired. The company itself had wasted talented young stars on the roster, many like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho. They would leave for stardom in WWF. The company never took the time to rebuild with new stars. They wasted the new stars that they were handed from ECW. Revenues were declining. WCW was projected to lose around $80 million in the year 2000. Thanks to budget cuts, they only lost around 60. Vince Russo was brought back to WCW as a writer and a booker. He would report to Eric Bischoff. Going into the WCW Bash at the Beach 2000 show, which we're about to review here, they had set up rumors backstage for the other wrestlers that Hulk Hogan was going to refuse to lose in the title match on this show.
When you say set up rumors for the wrestlers in the back, let's just shine even more of a light onto that. This was WCW doing a worked shoot, behind the scenes, worked shoot angle. And the people they were working in the weeks leading up to this weren't the fans. They were actually trying to work the wrestlers in the back into believing that what you're about to say was in fact a shoot, was in fact real life, it was really going on.
Exactly. So they wanted people to think that Hogan was being difficult. And while everything on this show was planned and scripted, a promo later by Russo will actually result in a real lawsuit. And I will go into details later in this episode about what happened with that lawsuit. But first, let's take you to July 9th, the year 2000, the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach, Florida. This show drew 6,572 fans. And
I don't believe that because the announcers on the show told me that there were 16,000 fans here in this building.
No, they drew 6,572,000, only 4,000 of which were paid. And the gate was $127,010. And they sold another $25,020 in merchandise. On pay-per-view, this show would generate $1.22 million company gross. But an interesting note, more than half of the total gross would go to Hogan, who was guaranteed $675,000 base in his contract. Ernest the Cat Miller arrives in a limo Tells his driver, I think, was named Smooth.
Well, his driver was named Smooth, and I'm pretty sure that Smooth is Ice Train.
Oh. Uh, he was told that the MIA and the Filthy Animals are banned from ringside for the Cruiserweight title match. Then he hears some music. Did I leave the radio on? It's the Young Dragons theme song. This would be a running gag throughout the show. It wasn't funny here. It wasn't funny later.
It was beyond not funny. This was classic, if you want to call it that. Vince Russo basically trafficking in racist tropes to garner laughs, quote unquote.
Well, 3 guys in karate gear show up. I'm alerted that these are the Young Dragons, and the Cat is the commissioner, and he proceeds to beat up the Young Dragons. We get a quick intro video saying Hogan and Jarrett's going to be for the title. Goldberg and Nash, and one of these 2 matches is for Scott Hall's contract. Between all the cuts and all the terrible editing here, it was actually tough to tell what was going on back and forth in this video. I assumed it was the Nash match, but this video was not great. This is poor production. Our announced team, Tony Schiavone, Scott Hudson, and Mark Madden, who I found to be just insufferable this entire show.
He was terrible for some similar and some different reasons, but he's right up there with 2002 Jerry Lawler from one of our other podcasts
Absolutely,
that we've done. He's right there with Lawler in terms of being that bad. It's also notable that Tony Schiavone says at the open of this show, quote, "This show," meaning Batch at the Beach, "has been the crossroads of sports entertainment." And that begins something we hear throughout this show, which is WCW trying so hard to be the WWF and constantly referring to themselves as sports entertainment, which I had blocked that out of my memory until going back and rewatching this show, that yes, WCW did refer to themselves as sports entertainment during this time period. They also tell us that apparently this is the first pay-per-view for Ernest Miller as commissioner. And then we go to the ring for a Cruiserweight title match.
The champion, Juventud Guerrera with the Filthy Animals.
And without a mask. This is the Filthy Animals, which at this point was a maskless Juventud Guerrera, a maskless Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman, Conan in a sweet white sweater, Tigress, and Disco Inferno, who at one point, what did he call him? Scott Hudson calls him Dim Shady the Hip Hop Inferno. And apparently Disco Inferno's gimmick at this time was that he was the white guy that tried to sound like he knew what was going on with rap and hip hop and things like that. Apparently, I don't know. This was not good, surprisingly.
Yeah, well, all those guys you just mentioned, sans Billy Kidman, they all showed up at ringside. So Smooth failed, or the Cat is not a good commissioner, or both, because everybody's at ringside for this match to start
the
out.
Stipulation is that nobody can be at ringside because of the crazy gang warfare between the Filthy Animals and the Misfits in action. This was supposed to be a match where there would be no interference, and there's one point where Scott Hudson says after the Misfits in action all come out too with Lieutenant Loco, who is Chavo Guerrero Jr., another gimmick I had completely forgotten. They never referenced that he's Chavo Guerrero, but the Misfits in action come out. Scott Hudson says, quote, "We have to get better communication," and I'm like, yeah. That is in fact true. WCW in 2000. We also learned that even though Juventud Guerrera came out with the belt, apparently he is not the champion. He stole the championship belt, and I can't even say. I'm just going to say Chavo Guerrero. Chavo Guerrero is the champion. That is the situation here, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Yes, but I didn't understand that until the match had started, because there was no graphics to tell me who the champion was. There'd be graphics for the rest of the show, but just this intro where there's actually confusion about who is the champion because the belt is being held by the challenger. I had no graphics. I had no idea that Chavo was the champion at this point, and Hoovy just stole the belt. So,
can you also tell me who all I did not have it written down here because my brain
were
was
the
already
Misfits in
exploding.
action?
So we had Van Hammer wearing a shirt that said Coast Guard.
Yes, Van Hammer was there. I don't know all of their Misfits in Action names, but yes,
Yeah, I don't remember Van Hammer's name. I remember that
Hugh Morris.
Hugh Morris. Bill DeMott was there as General Rection. Who else did we have in this?
We
mix?
had Lash LaRue, who was there.
He was Private something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Private
Cajun something. No, I don't know.
no, yeah, Cajun. Yeah,
Corporal Cajun. No,
Corporal Cajun. There you go. That's close enough.
And Major Guns. The to offset Tigress, we had a woman there named Major Guns, and she'll play into the finish of the match.
It's also noteworthy that Juventud Guerrera is wrestling this match in sweatpants.
Yeah, so he was very casual this entire match, as we'll see. All the geeks were sent to the back eventually for the match to start. So we had all Lieutenant Loco early, including a suplex of Juvi from inside the ring over the top rope to the floor.
Yeah, from the apron to the floor. I thought Chavo looked awesome early. He hits a big dive to the floor. He is fired up. He hits this like weird plancha to the floor. His back is to Juvi, who's on the floor. He jumps up to the first rope while holding the top rope, and then springs off the first rope while still holding the top rope backwards into a plancha on Juvi. This was weird but kind of cool.
Yeah, and then for all the cool stuff he did like not cool stuff, like having Juvi in the corner and Lieutenant Loco's trying to spank him. I don't know what's going on.
Mark Madden's talking about, there's Mark Madden makes some weird comments here.
This match feels like it could be really good, but there was just lots of shenanigans and
well, if this match had happened in like 1998 on Nitro or on like Bash of the Beach 98 with these same people, this would have been great.
Yeah, and Juvi's kind of not going. He'll have bursts of full speed, but I think his gimmick is that he's in sweatpants and just like lounging.
It was more than his gimmick too. I don't think this was I don't think he was just doing the Orange Cassidy gimmick
right
in 2000 here. I think there was some lived gimmick happening.
So back and forth, both men collide with a double clothesline. Juvi falls to the outside. Loco goes off the top with a huge dive to Juvi.
That is a plancha. It's a huge dive. It's a flying cross body that Tony calls a double axe handle.
He did.
And this is the point of the match where I note that, quote, I'm quoting my notes here. Tony is trying so hard, but is forced over the top enthusiasm. And that is, to me, a story we'll go back to over and over again on this show, is that by this point, Tony Schiavone is beyond mentally checked out. But he is trying so hard to force himself to make this into the greatest night in the history of our sport, as he's said many a time. And it's there's some lines on this show from Tony. I'll just say that I've noted a few.
The filthy animals in masks sneak down the ramp.
These masks are like rubber Halloween masks that you'd see when someone's like robbing a bank or going to like your local Halloween USA store that's in an abandoned storefront for 6 weeks. That's what's going on here.
The distraction allowed for a roll up on Loco, only a 2 count. The animals are sent to the back. Loco's on the outside. Juvi with a dive over the top, landing on the floor with a leg drop. Well, the other thing that's crazy is we'll learn later on, this is only 6 days after Johnny the Bull, Johnny Stamboli, executes one of the most horrifying, maybe the most horrifying non-deathmatch spot in pro wrestling history. A very similar move to this where he I don't know any other way to say it. The man ruptured his anus doing that move. And so it was terrifying to see Juvi do something not entirely dissimilar less than a week later. Juvi walks Loco out of the corner into a sit-out powerbomb that Tony Schiavone says is almost a version of a Liger bomb.
That's a classic Tonyism as well. He, in his later years in WCW, every move would be, he'd always say it was almost or a version of, and here he used both.
Juvi picks him up for what looks like another powerbomb, but Loco doesn't go all the way up, so he just kind of drops down with him.
Yeah.
The announcers try to cover this by calling it a, quote, front suplex, which it definitely was not.
Yeah, it could be called many things. A front suplex would not be one of them. I will give Hoovy credit here because this was safer than what Doug Furness did to Masato Tanaka in a somewhat similar situation on the show that we reviewed on last week's podcast, ECW Living Dangerously, 1998.
Yes, anything is safer. Juventud does a people's elbow, full throwing the elbow pad and everything. The MIA show up in masks, just like the Filthy Animals did earlier.
Including a Bill Clinton mask.
A Bill Clinton mask. And Juventud's up on top gets distracted as Major Guns rips off her tank top, allowing Loco to knock him off. He had a visual pin for a long 3 count, but the ref was distracted by by Loco's MIA buddies outside. So big near fall comes with a tornado DDT, countered into a Hoovy driver attempt, which is countered into a sit-out suplex. Scott Hudson called it an inverted power bomb. Okay.
Not true.
We get a Hoovy driver, but foot on the ropes. Loco hits a perfect tornado DDT, and that was a great
tornado
finish.
DDT where it's not like he's already in the corner, like we talked about with Masato Tanaka doing the DDT out of the corner. Here he grabs a front face lock, runs up the ropes in the corner, and hits a tornado DDT out of it. Like you said, picture perfect, gets the win. He's mobbed by the Misfits in action. And at this point, as I was watching this show, I texted you, Jeremy, and I said, are they using canned crowd heat here on this live pay-per-view? And as the show goes along, it is painfully apparent that they are in fact using the Thunder Heat Machine to create heat here, in addition to whatever crowd noise is actually happening. It's most noticeable when like they're going to the announcers at the desk, or we are backstage for a hidden camera sort of backstage segment, and you hear the crowd popping for moves that clearly aren't happening because there's not a match.
Yeah, I wrote it down. It was painfully obvious in the Chronic match later that we'll get to.
There was also one other spot I'll mention later on where there was crowd brawling and the ambient sound goes away. And there's also one other point where there's in a match where the ambient sound and the miking of the ring goes away, and all we hear as the action is going on is just the fake crowd noise, and it is really, really embarrassing and bad. But I did not ever recall that being used on a pay-per-view, on a live pay-per-view broadcast. That was something.
12 minutes, 9 seconds for that opener. Backstage.
It was fine.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Backstage with the Cat and the Young Dragons. I think he fired them, but they didn't understand. I don't understand either. Jeff Jarrett barges in. He asks where Hogan is. He
barges in, by the way, with an overweight Viking woman named Mimi, and she's screaming and starting to sing. Apparently, we'll learn later on in the show, this was a storyline that had been building, if you can call it that, with Jeff Jarrett holding a competition to get the best fat woman singing.
That's right.
And then the announcers start
singing for the end of Hogan's career. Yeah.
Yep. And then the announcers start talking about whether Hogan will appear. And then we go to more video. This is video of Thunder last week as Vito, the hardcore champion of World Championship Wrestling, attacks Terry Funk with the championship belt and a stick ball bat. So that means we do not get Terry Funk on this show.
No Terry Funk. No Johnny the Bull.
No.
He comes. He's on the mic and demanding an opponent, and out comes...
Terrible promo, by the way. Terrible promo.
Awful.
As he's wearing the WCW Hardcore Championship, which is a horrendous knockoff visually of the ECW World Heavyweight title.
Out comes screaming Norman Smiley with Ralphus, and I have no memory of Ralphus being around after Jericho left. I remember Ralphus and Jericho. I didn't remember this Ralphus and Norman Smiley buddy tandem here.
Neither did I. They do not refer to him, by the way, as Norman Smiley at all. He is just screaming Norman.
Screaming Norman. So
they also inform us as this hardcore match gets underway that the rules of a hardcore match in WCW are that they must start in the back and then go to the ring. I don't know if this was some sort of cross promotion with the WCW Backstage Assault, terrible excuse for a video game, but that apparently was that. Those were the rules, and This is also where Scott Hudson tells us about Johnny the Bull nearly killing himself. Which
I was so mad when I heard these rules because they have the guys come to the ring for introductions, but then you have to start in the back.
It literally makes no sense because the rules should be that the introductions happen in the back.
They happen in the back, and then you start in the back.
So it starts in or near the ring. Then you're supposed to brawl to the back, and then you're supposed to go back to the ring to win. Yep. I don't know.
Yeah, completely nuts.
And then, like I said, Scott Hudson tells us about Johnny the Bull, which this spot was Johnny the Bull versus Terry Funk. Terry Funk is on the floor. Johnny the Bull proceeds to do a springboard top rope leg drop to the floor, I believe onto a chair, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, Terry Funk moves. Johnny the Bull lands, obviously ass first on the floor, and basically explodes his insides. Just horrifying spot if you ever have the misfortune of seeing it.
Do not see. Vito immediately kills Ralphus with a shot to the gut with the cane, and then to the back with the cane, just dead Ralphus. So they're fighting near the stage, and they're in the back, so now the match officially starts. Vito's already cut. Ralphus is alive as Smiley's holds Vito so Ralphus can hit him with a garbage can.
And he hits him over and over and over again. He's just wearing Vito out with these trash can lid spots.
We get a big wiggle from Smiley, his little dance move there. Then they need to fight their way to the ring now. So they're fighting, and they send Norman into the elevator, and he's off to go somewhere.
Well, first they're brawling on there's this truck. It's by the loading dock, and apparently there's the juxtaposition of this is amazing. Tony Schiavone is just going on with passion about how these men in hardcore matches put their lives on the line every time they go out there and wrestle. And at this moment, what we are seeing on our television screens is the two men throwing plastic catering items at each other before this elevator spot occurs.
Yeah, so Norman Smiley off to somewhere in an elevator. Ralph is all alone. He's bleeding slightly. Ralphus loses a shoe on the way to the ring. They're in the ring. He hits Ralphus low with a baseball bat. Vito put a table in the ring. The table is already broken. So
the legs on one side are broken, so he basically has to prop it up.
Yeah, he half stands it up.
Not in the corner. He stands it up, just half stands it up in the middle of the ring.
Leans Ralphus against it. He hits Ralphus with a splash off the top rope through the table, gets the 3 count, still the champion, and at this point, Smiley makes his way down the ramp, but it's too late.
Well, he makes the way down the ramp with zero urgency.
None whatsoever.
And I think Hudson even kind of makes fun of it. He's coming down the ramp ostensibly to try to make the save, but he sees what's happening, and his pace does not quicken whatsoever.
On replay, that splash, he murdered Ralphus with that splash. It was absolutely brutal. 5 minutes and 55 seconds.
Yes, Ralphus was a large, very overweight,
Google image search
man.
Ralphus WCW, and you'll see this the old man who shouldn't have been in this match.
No.
Goldberg arrives with Scott Hall's contract in his pocket. Nash says he's Goldberg's only real defeat, and he'll do it again, and maybe with a survey time, because he knows Billy hates that. So, fun Kevin Nash.
He's interviewed by Gene Okerlund, by the way, which I had no recollection of Gene still being with WCW in the summer of 2000.
He was barely there. Barely in the camera shots, barely adding anything.
Yes, Nash was very subdued here, except for when he swore. I guess I'll wait till we get to later with Goldberg because I completely blocked out what Goldberg's role was at this time, and they
Yeah,
don't do
we'll
a good
get to
job telling
no,
us
we'll
until
get to it
much
later.
later.
I am shocked later when we get to this point.
Yeah, so is I.
We get a video package recapping Daphne and Miss Hancock's rivalry. Miss Hancock
I like
was
how you referred to it as a rivalry, as though this was a sporting endeavor.
Miss
You're like
Hancock was,
Tony. You're trying. You're like
I'm
Tony.
trying.
You're trying so hard here to make this
is
seem
one
important.
of the worst things on the show.
This is one of the worst things on any show that's ever happened in the history of professional wrestling.
Yes, this story is terrible too. Miss Hancock is trying to steal Daphne's fiance, who is David Flair. Yes, son of Ric Flair, David Flair. And we're going to have a wedding gown match. The way you win is by ripping the wedding dress off of your opponent.
If you ever wondered what Vince Russo's, like what the calling cards for Vince Russo were in WCW, this would be one of them.
Exactly. Miss Hancock, as you would know later by her real name, Stacy Keibler in WWF, and later Dancing with the Stars fame. She's with David Flair. They come out. She's wearing a short wedding dress. David's got a full tux on. This
is as Tony says, and I quote, as they're coming down to the ring, "This is a heartbreaking story, better than any soap opera." And then Tony proceeds to try to legitimately sell the emotional resonance of this story.
There's a wedding cake at ringside, and Scott Hudson lets us know that it's wrestling, so someone's going into that cake. We have to watch David and Miss Hancock make out. This is very gross.
Flair has, by the way, he also has, for some reason, he has like shears, clippers. He has a razor. I don't know why.
Daphne comes out, long black dress. She's in immediately, hits David with a low blow. We get a horrible handspring elbow attempt by Miss Hancock. The ref and David both get their pants taken off.
Well, Tony also definitely hits a snapmare as well, and Tony's like analyzing this like a wrestling match, talking about who has more experience, saying that Miss Hancock has the advantage because she's tall.
David and Hancock try to shave Daphne's head, like you mentioned. They had the clippers, but Crowbar comes out to make the save. Crowbar takes off his pants. Crowbar and David Flair fight with no pants on.
Yes, to recap, the referee gets stripped down to his pants for no reason.
Tighty whities all around. Yep.
Yes, David Flair is stripped down to his underwear. Then Crowbar, the former Devon Storm, who is aligned with Daphne at this point, he comes out. He strips down to his boxers. Then he hits his move. What was it called?
I'm keeping on. Daphne,
I'm going to call it Cro-Magnum. Is what I'm going to call it.
Daphne goes to cut David's hair. Miss Hancock saves David by taking off her wedding dress and dancing. Daphne's your winner. Daphne interrupts the dance with cake in the face. It breaks down into a food fight. This is one of those matches where you're wildly embarrassed if a non-wrestling fan walks into the room while you're watching this match.
If you are in a relationship and you're watching this match and your significant other walks into the room, that is a point at which you are no longer in a relationship. It was that embarrassing. The finish was, again, not that this even should be analyzed that much, but the finish was so weird because the way to win was to strip the opponent. She gets to the mic. She's like, I know what everybody's here to see. And then she just does that. And then that is the end of the match. The food fight goes on for way too long on the floor with the cake. And then they clearly did not plan for the fact that when you have a gigantic cake being thrown around the entire ringside area, it is really messy on the mats. And it is going to take a long time to clean up. And then that is what we have here. We have a long stretch of things that must take place to allow them to clean up around the ring. And the best part is that like we have random shots where the announcers are talking, and then we get like a visual update on the cake cleaning process.
Oh,
and then go
and
back to
these
the
guys have
announcers.
no idea what they're doing. It's like they've never cleaned a mess. I'm like,
No.
what are you doing? They're like pouring water bottles or just
They're making it
pushing around.
messier.
I'm like, what are you doing? Have you never cleaned a mess? This is
Then they
completely
finally
ridiculous.
just decide to turn the mats over, which is funny because later on we'll mention there's one spot where a wrestler pulls up the mats and you can see all the cake residue on the now underside of the mats.
So the cat is concerned about the non-arrival of Hulk Hogan.
He has a great line, by the way. The cat. He asked if Ox Baker is still under contract, which I just howled with laughter because this was basically a self-own for WCW, basically talking about how like when they had Lanny Poffo under contract for 4 years and never even used him. So that was a rare insider thing here that actually made me laugh.
Rumors over the last week were happening. He wasn't at Nitro. He wasn't at Thunder. So this was all part of the trying to make people believe that there was real dissension, but this was all a plan all along.
Hulk Hogan you're talking about,
Correct.
by the way.
Yes. So Shivani, in his stalling and tap dancing, recaps Hogan's Bash at the Beach history: 94 winning the WCW title in his first match, 96 joining the NWO.
In this very building in
this
Daytona
very
Beach,
building.
Florida.
Now we've got the World Tag Team titles. And I heard Mr. Perfect knockoff music and I got excited.
I did too.
But no Kurt Hennig. This is not World War III back from one of our early reviews. No Kurt Hennig whatsoever. It's the WCW Tag Team Champions, The Perfect Event, Chuck Palumbo and Sean Stasiak.
Yes, Perfection, Sean Stasiak, and the event, I guess, Chuck Palumbo. We also have then Chronic comes out. Chronic being Brian Clark, the former Crush, and Brian Adams, the former Wrath and Adam Bomb.
No, other way around. Other way around. Clark was
Oh,
Wrath
yes,
and Adam
yes.
Bomb. Adams was Crush. They are
getting my
very
Brian's mixed up.
interchangeable. Yes.
Neither of them wrote the summer of '69, so I
No,
was
neither.
disappointed. Scott Hudson says, and I quote, Chronic are the most impressive physical specimens in the history of the WCW tag team division.
And
False.
and this is false. And this is where I wrote in my notes, this is really fake crowd noise. And
Oh, yeah.
and I said
It is
during this
very
match
noticeable here.
was the most noticeable for me. Lots of noise and no fan reaction to the seats.
Well,
Fans
yeah,
are-
you're not seeing anyone in the crowd reacting, and then you're hearing this crowd reaction as though it's in your house Canadian Stampede, the main event. It's really weird. I will say that my favorite part of this match, and maybe my favorite part of this entire broadcast, is the brief shot we get of the Perfect Event harassing Bill Apter at ringside.
So Brian Adams is a strong dude. He presses Stasiak over his head, threw him over the top to the floor where he lands on Palumbo. Stasiak's a good-sized dude.
These are huge men. That was one of the other, well, this was very impressive, but it was one of the other weird things about this match is that the storyline was that the Perfect Event are the accidental tag team champions, and they constantly luck their way into winning, but they're terrible, which they're not great, but they are the exact same size as Chronic.
Yep. Yeah.
And their role here is to be like the cowardly heels running away. It was very strange. But yeah, the story apparently is that the Perfect Event always somehow barely wins.
Palumbo has cake frosting on his ass because they couldn't get the ringside cleaned up like we mentioned. All Chronic early, lots of power moves, Uranagi, full Nelson slams. Palumbo with a low bridge, Adams over the top rope, but very slow and clumsy to get there.
Well, these are the steel cable ropes, and Chuck Palumbo either just did not grasp how hard he would have to pull down on these ropes to get them to go, or they just wouldn't go. And so, yeah, basically Palumbo is pulling down on the top rope, but it's not going down at all. And so Adams just gets stuck and then kind of flings himself over. We then have some chair shots on the floor from Palumbo, throws him back into the ring.
We get a "Let's
mounted,
go Chronic" chant at this point.
Yes, it may or may not have been real. We then have some mounted punches from Shawn Stasiak. It's at this point that I note, like, Shawn Stasiak he's not terrible, but it's like in 2005 OVW going into WWF or WWE, how like every guy was cookie cutter the same. That's Shawn Stasiak here. The other thing I did note at this point in the match is that Chuck Palumbo, he's not great. He's not even good, but he does some individual things very well. He hits an awesome top rope flying shoulder block. And the other thing that he has, if nothing else, he throws great punches. He has a great right hand.
We get a couple of long sleeper spots by the Perfect Event. We get a hot tag to Clark. He tries to run to the corner to clothesline Palumbo and slips on the logo in the middle of the ring, stumbling. Clark's unable to hit his move called the Meltdown,
which is it's a pump handle power slam. He starts in a pump handle, flips the guy over, hits a power slam. But yeah, Palumbo gets out and hits a really nice DDT.
Nice DDT. We had sloppy double teams by the Perfect Event. Adams.
We have this weird spot where Stasiak gets a hot tag and then runs wild like a baby face. Yeah. He starts hitting drop kicks and back elbows and flying clotheslines. Like, what the hell was that? Adams
hits a crappy looking F5.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar, he is not.
This is pre Brock Lesnar doing an F5, but yeah, I guess it's a curiosity seeing it here in 2000.
Chronic goes for their move, High Time, which is a double choke slam. Palumbo's able to break it up. We do see the High Time on Palumbo too. Stasiak brings the Flexor into the ring as
the Lex
a weapon.
Flexor. This was they took this after vanquishing Lex Luger and Buff Bagwell, they had some wacky team name too. I don't know if it was like the Buff Package or something. It wasn't that, but it might as well have been. But yeah, the Lex Flexor here was inherited from them vanquishing Lex Luger.
So he tries to use it as a weapon, but Chronic hits a Doomsday device for the win.
Well, yeah, it was a double team. It was a powerbomb version of the Doomsday device. It was actually pretty cool.
New tag team champions are Chronic. The people are happy. Chronic was popular, not popular enough to not need pumped in crowd noise, but popular nonetheless. Fun fact, Chronic would lose the tag titles in August to the natural team of Vampiro and the Great Muta.
Well, there you go. Vampiro, who we'll see later on in quite the battle. I will note that it always struck me as odd, like they're called Chronic, an obvious nod to weed.
Yep.
Yet there's nothing in there, like all their moves are named after weed, after marijuana, but there's nothing they ever really say or do that would tell you that they smoke a lot of weed. Their gear is black and red with like barbed wire red on the gear. I don't know. It was just strange to me.
No, if you ask me so far on this show, of all the people we've seen, pick out who Chronic is. After I had already gone through most of the Filthy Animals and MIA, then I would have gotten to the other guys, the Perfect Event, before I got to these guys.
I would have guessed that was the new gimmick for Kevin Nash.
Yes. So 13 minutes, 36 seconds in that tag title match.
Then we are to the back.
Jarrett's telling Kat backstage that he needs to produce Hogan soon. He's still not there yet. Now, Hogan is actually there the entire time. This is not real. Then the Young Dragons attack the Cat. This is all lame. Positively Canyon makes his way out. This is Canyon doing a DDP impression.
Yeah, another gimmick I had completely forgotten about, and another guy who is, I guess, no longer in the company at that point, or was kind of in that weird limbo period that a lot of the stars in WCW were. He comes out to DDP's knockoff Nirvana music, which I liked.
His opponent is Booker T. We get loud Booker T chants. He is very popular, and you can tell there was actual crowd reaction for his popularity.
Yes. He also Booker T came out to his Harlem Heat music, which is some
So great. It's a great theme
top
song.
tier pro wrestling entrance music. It is also at this point during the entrances that Tony Schiavone casually tells us that we will see something called a graveyard match later.
Ugh.
At this point, I'm wondering if my subscription is somehow like buffering weirdly and it's actually WrestleMania in 2020. I'm very confused as to what's going on here.
Booker knocks the blonde wig off of Canyon with a kick. Got an awesome clothesline by Booker.
Booker was so great back then.
He was so good here. He finds a brick in the book that Canyon brought out.
Yes. Canyon brought a book, Positively Canyon, that is a ripoff of the DDP book, Positively Page.
Which, it's a highly recommend reading Positively Page if you haven't read it. It's actually a really good book. Booker gets the brick, just tosses it away, doesn't need it. All Booker squashing Canyon early. Then, for what felt like the 10th time on this show, someone gets the advantage by dropping down and pulling the tights to throw the guy over them to the outside. I've seen this so many times on this one show. It was completely insane.
Yes, that got to work out. The guardrails got to work out. And we'll see later on, they brawl into the crowd on this show many times, but there's one specific spot that they go out into the crowd and one specific spot that crowd brawling occurs. It's odd.
On the outside, Canyon puts the stairs on the arm of Booker T and then hits the stairs with a chair to injure his arm or his back.
Incredibly stupid, because the only thing that would do is send vibrations, I guess, through the arm or the back. And yeah, he puts it on the arm, but apparently that injures Booker's back.
Yeah, because he's working over his back. But I guess Booker had a back injury from coming into the match, I guess. I don't know. It was hard to follow. Booker with a comeback, and his offense was so great. We mentioned it already, but it's worth mentioning again. Looked fantastic here.
Well, how about Canyon? Before Booker's comeback, Canyon with some innovator of offense stuff. That's what they call him. That second rope superplex. Booker is standing on the apron. Canyon on the second rope, not by the turnbuckles, like the middle of the second rope, superplexes him back in. That was awesome. We have a Canyon, a sit out sidewalk slam spinebuster type of move, a reverse Boston Crab. Okay, some pretty cool stuff.
No, reverse Boston Crab was not cool. When we talk about moves that should be brought back, this is not one of them. I did not care for the reverse Boston Crab.
It's the pendulum of pain, man.
Canyon hits Booker with the book that no longer had the brick in it. Canyon realizes that it doesn't have a brick. Not because of the weight difference of a book with a brick versus a book with no brick, but he only realizes it because Booker kicked out of the book shot. So Canyon's down. He grabs the ref. Booker's going to the top turnbuckle. Jeff Jarrett runs down with a guitar in his hand.
The acoustic equalizer, as we're told throughout this evening.
Jarrett hits Booker with the guitar, and listeners of this podcast know that when powder explodes out of a guitar shot, I get real mad. Well, credit to Jeff Jarrett. No powder here, just an exploding guitar. Thank you very much. Well,
it's because we learned in 1995 while watching WWF that Jeff Jarrett is a legitimate, authentic country music star. So he actually plays the guitar. Therefore, this guitar would not have collected dust. That's my storyline reason as to why there's no dust in this acoustic guitar.
A middle rope Canyon cutter, and Canyon gets the 3 count. 10 minutes, 5 seconds. Surprise victory here.
Yeah. Well, and then the announcers start yelling about that's outside interference and the cat will be mad. But we don't have any context as to why. I don't know.
Backstage, Mike Awesome is hitting on Jeff Jarrett's fat lady opera singer.
Well, it's playing off of the 2 gimmicks ago. Mike Awesome was, quote, the fat chick thriller, unquote.
That is
before
correct.
He became the career killer. But they were, I guess, playing off that old angle or that old gimmick as he was being interviewed by Pamela Paulshock.
He's going to beat Big Papa Pump for a 3rd time. And we go right to the U.S. Championship match. Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner with Medeja. And he is the champion. He's the U.S. champion. He takes on challenger Mike Awesome. Both men have black short trunks on with the exact same shade of red writing.
Come on. I thought of you right away.
How does that happen?
I thought of you and how angry you would be about this lack of wardrobe coordination from these two men.
Yes, you should not have almost matching gear on.
It's WCW in 2000. What did you expect?
I know, and it's the least of their problems here, but this drives me insane. Talk to each other before the match, please. So Steiner immediely throws Awesome into the guardrail outside.
He jumps him on the floor before Awesome even gets into the ring. And we're on here. There's a level of intensity to this match that there really isn't to anything else on this show. Mike Awesome backdrops Scott Steiner over the guardrail and then hits his huge running dive over the guardrail into the crowd. As the crowd chants ECW, I'm guessing that was real. I don't think that was piped in by the Thunder Heat Machine. At this point,
I was terrified for the fans having Steiner dumped in their laps like that in the first row.
I was not expecting that very ECW-like spot for Mike Awesome and Scott Steiner right at the start of this. And then at this point, the crowd brawl is on. It's actually a pretty wild scene by WCW standards. They brawl from ringside all the way over to the wall of the first floor of the arena. There's garbage cans flying. There's beers flying. Mike Awesome hits a body slam on the floor. There's fans everywhere. The only thing I don't see in this sea of fans is security. No. Maybe the very age progressed Doug Dillinger was around, but if he was, he blended in. This was far more chaotic than it needed to be. They needed Atlas security here, big time.
So they're making their way back to the ring. Both men on the top rope. Steiner hits an almost overhead belly-to-belly suplex. This was still impressive looking, but absolutely just terrifying. I was very nervous.
Awesome was so close to landing on his head. This was also the point to where Tony Schiavone calls them superstars of sports entertainment on this WCW broadcast. Also, one quick note, when they were brawling, getting back toward the ring as they're coming back through the crowd, that was maybe the most noticeable part on the show with the fake crowd noise. It was really, really bad.
Back on the floor, Awesome uses a chair and the ring bell, and the ref does not care. This is not a disqualification. Tony, in fact, praises the referee for being lax with the rules because that's what the fans want to see. What?
Tony was actually, that aside, Tony was great in this match because he actually had something he could sink his teeth into instead of just pretending to think this is awesome. He's talking about some of the risks Mike Awesome is taking and talking about how, the emotion of battle makes guys do things they wouldn't do otherwise. And this was one of the few points in the show where I actually thought Tony Schiavone here in 2000 sounded like AEW announcer Tony Schiavone, where Tony is basically like the continuity editor on the show, always covering up for things that don't make sense and explaining guys' motivations. He was awesome here.
And this match was awesome. This match was so good.
It was great. This was a legitimately awesome, great match to this point.
Great match, and I had no expectations when I saw this match starting. And then Commissioner Cat comes out, and the match kind of took a turn here. Steiner's going for his move, the Steiner recliner, which is his camel clutch. But the Cat on the mic says, "No, you don't." And Steiner not.
And we have no idea what's going on at this point. That we've not had any explanation as to why he would be saying, "No, you don't." The only thing of any note we were told earlier on in the match was that Scott Steiner had been suspended for some reason, but he's back now.
No, but Mark Madden eventually lets us know that the Cat... Eventually he lets us know the Cat banned that move. Got it, thank you. But I was wildly confused for quite a while there. Steiner kicks out of a top rope frog splash by Awesome.
Yes, Awesome's big move, his big finisher in ECW along with the Awesome Bomb. Steiner kicks out, and then, things start to fall apart even more from here.
The ref's knocked down. Cat tries to kick Steiner, but hits Mike Awesome. Steiner with an overhead belly-to-belly on the Cat. Cat again says he's going to strip him if he puts the recliner on. He puts it on anyway. The Cat strips him of the title. He leaves with the belt. Looks like neither man is the U.S. champ. This match was really, really good. This finish was really, really lame. It was way better than it had any right to be. 9 minutes and 11 seconds for this match. I really enjoyed it.
Oh no, this was the action was fantastic. I had no expectation that we would see 9 minutes. Well, I guess about 7.5 minutes of wrestling this good on the show before all the stuff with the cat. The punctuation mark to this match is afterwards. Scott Steiner takes out the cat, then runs back into the ring and absolutely murders Mike Austin with a T-bone suplex.
He did.
Drops him right on the top of his head.
Graveyard match. We heard about it earlier. Now we get to see it.
First, we go back to the announce booth, and like they're talking about, we don't know who the U.S. champion is. We also don't know if Hulk Hogan is here. And then Tony Schiavone again casually says, like he grabs his headset and he says, "We understand. We are going to now take you to the graveyard." And then I don't even know how to describe this because again, in a lot of ways,
we don't have to describe it very much.
This is well, it is in the year 2000. This is on, I'm assuming, a backlot set at Universal Studios or something. It's spooky. There is some fog. It's a swamp. The best way I can describe this is an extremely low budget version of the cinematic wrestling craze of 2020. But you have the announcers doing commentary over this match, trying to call it as though it is a pro wrestling match. And you get things like Vampiro jumping out of a tree and Tony Schiavone calmly saying, "Vampiro just jumped out of a tree."
The Vampiro is taking on the Kiss Demon, who is Dale Torborg.
And they keep telling us that he's Dale Torborg because, and this is a very WCW thing, Dale Torborg is the son of former Chicago White Sox manager. What was his dad's name? Something Torborg?
Jeff Torborg was the he was a coach for Florida for the Florida Marlins. Dale Torborg is now the conditioning coach for the White Sox. So
okay, that's the connection. But
yep.
they thought because his dad was a coach or a manager of some sort in Major League Baseball that Dale Torborg was the name was big enough that they needed to alternate between calling him the Kiss Demon, because that's where this character came from. This was a co-promoted thing with the band Kiss initially, where, fun fact, part of the contract with Kiss was that any match that the Kiss Demon was in was a main event match. He had to be in the main event. So how WCW got around that was they would do ring introductions, calling any match he was in, even if it was second on the card on Thunder, they would call it a main event.
We can't see anything because it's really only lit by a referee's flashlight.
One flashlight from Charles Robinson.
So this is terrible. You mentioned Vampiro leaping off of a tree to get the match started. The Vampiro goes after the Demon's fiance, Asia, which is WCW's knockoff version of China, because Asia is bigger than China. Get it? They actually, fun fact, Dale Torborg and Asia did get married in real life.
Well, someone got something out of the show, at least, thank God.
So Vampiro emerged from the water to attack the demon. They fight in a pond. They fight on
meanwhile,
land.
Asia is rocking back and forth in some sort of trance, some sort of traumatized trance at the river's edge because Vampiro did something.
Vampiro hits him with a big rock that explodes on impact. This looked ridiculous.
He literally says at this point, "It's the moment of truth, Dal. Are you ready to live or die?"
I'm ready to stop talking about this match. Vampiro puts him
over the head with the tombstone.
He puts him in a casket. He pushes a casket into a grave hole, tries to light it on fire, and then...
Which the announcers do not acknowledge.
No.
The coffin is in an open grave. The camera multiple times shows that there's a fire starting. The announcers do not reference this. Apparently, Vampiro had shoved Sting off of a 45-foot platform and set him on fire and killed him in the preceding weeks to this. And Vampiro, when he puts Dale Torborg in the coffin, he then flips it in the grave, tells Sting, say hi to Sting, or tells Torborg, say hi to Sting when you see him in hell, sets the grave on fire, and then boom, we all of a sudden go to the backstage area where Gene Okerlund is interviewing Shane Douglas.
No, yeah, before we get there, Vampiro starts walking back to the arena because this sucks. The way you win this match is by going back to the arena. That's how you win.
Yes.
So
this match is not in fact over.
No, it's not over. He's walking back to the arena. This sucked. This is the longest 6 minutes and 40 seconds of my life. I will never have it back. What's more insane in watching this match was actually filmed the previous night. So This is what aired with opportunities for reshoots, post-production. Wow. It's amazing that someone didn't say, this can't air. Do not put this on the show. I was shocked.
This was one of it. To this point, the show is incredible, not for the reasons that Tony Schiavone is trying to sell you. In the sense that we are maybe an hour and a half into this professional wrestling show, this pay-per-view broadcast, and there have already been 2 things on this show that are legitimate contenders for the worst match in the history of professional wrestling.
You mentioned Gene Okerlund interviewing the franchise. He guarantees he's going to win.
I just have to drive this home. This is a hard, immediate jump cut from the graveyard match to Gene Okerlund's face in the back.
The match is Buff Bagwell versus Shane Douglas. This is a basic nothing match.
Yes.
Torrie Wilson comes down, teases being with Buff, but turns on him quickly. Douglas hits Buff with a weird move. I don't know how to describe it. It's like Danny Doring's horrible finisher. It
basically is a worse version of, was it the bareback Danny Doring's move?
Yeah,
it's like a front version of a stunner, but 10 times worse than that. He basically, imagine hugging your friend, and then as you're holding onto your friend, as you're hugging them, dropping to your knees, and apparently their chin hits your shoulder, and that knocks them unconscious.
And so Torrie celebrates with Douglas by making out. Douglas gets a head cheerleader, 7 minutes, 53 seconds.
My only note about this match is that they only call him the franchise. They don't call him Shane Douglas.
In the back, Hollywood Hulk Hogan is here. We get a video package for the Jarrett Hogan feud. The fat lady will sing, and the chosen one will get rid of Hogan, blah, blah, blah. Michael Buffer is in the ring for the main event of the evening.
1 hour and 50 minutes into this show. So if you're watching this show in real time and you're looking at the clock, you know something strange is going to happen. And Tony Schiavone, again, this is a good Tony Schiavone continuity editor spot here. He lets us know that we still have the Scott Hall contract match to go. And then also says, where's Vampiro? But it was one of those things that if you're watching the show and you're thinking, oh, why is the main event coming out? Why is the world title match coming out an hour and 52 minutes into the show? Tony tells us, yes, there is more still to come. I thought that was a nice little touch.
Jarrett's music plays for a long time. Then Vince Russo comes out with a baseball bat. Then Jeff Jarrett comes out. NWO music hits for Hollywood Hogan's entrance. Hogan does his full normal entrance. The announcers talk over Buffer's introductions the entire time, so I couldn't hear what ridiculous things he says. I always love laughing at Buffer's descriptions, and I was a little frustrated about that.
Tony, when he's talking over him, much like I talked over you there, apologies. I just was so excited to tell you that Tony Schiavone, again, in his hyperbolic manner, tells us this is the most personal match in the history of Hulk Hogan's career, and then tries to really drive it home by calling Hulk Hogan by his real name, Terry Bollea.
Yeah, Hogan. Yeah, but then we're immediately told that Hogan got this title shot by defeating Billy Kidman at the Great American Bash. So, so much for that. Hogan grabs the mic. You are the chosen one. I have chosen to powerbomb you through this mat. I've chosen to powerbomb you through this mat for Big Sexy. So come on down. And so Jarrett had made his way back up the ramp to the entrance after already have been down in the ring. And so Jarrett walks back down to the ring. He gets in the ring, immediately lays down. Russo throws the belt in the ring at the feet of Hogan. Hogan wants the mic again. Says, this is why the company is in the shape it's in, because of bullshit like this. Hogan puts his boot on Jarrett's chest. The referee drops down, counts 3. Jarrett gets up and leaves. Hogan leaves. The announcers say, we just saw a slice of real life.
Yeah, Tony says, we've just seen a slice of real life. Scott Hudson says, this is not something they went over with us in the production meeting. Says, there are swerves and there are swerves. We've all been swerved, says Tony. Scott Hudson says, Hudson talks about, we didn't know what Hogan would agree to do. Then Madden sarcastically says, Hulk got to win, and we all know that's what's important. Scott Hudson says, this is wild. This is pretty good. I note, not really.
Now, this was all planned. Hogan left with the title belt with the idea that he would return 3 months later and proclaim himself the real champion. But while Hogan, Bischoff, and Russo were working together on this, Russo then double-crossed them, as we'll see in a few minutes. The end result was Hogan actually would not return.
Yes. We also, at this point, then, we see Vampiro appears, because we remember, oh, yes, we have the graveyard match where one man murdered another man and now has to walk back to the ring to win this athletic endeavor.
That's right.
We
he
see
walks past
Vampiro,
Hogan.
Yes, Hogan with his kids, and Hogan is holding his WCW World Title belt at this point. Tony at this point says something he probably should have said much earlier in this show. I have no idea what to say, quote unquote. Vampiro's music hits. Madden is still talking about... Madden actually has the only good line he's had the entire night and maybe his whole career. He says, what happened in this world title match makes the graveyard match look sane. So quality point there by Mark Madden.
Vampiro's in the ring.
Yeah.
And so that means he's the winner of the match. Someone dressed as Sting, definitely not Sting, attacks Vampiro. We couldn't tell anything else that was happening because the lights keep going out. Whatever. This is lame.
You're not. I know how much you hate this the graveyard match, but you're not doing justice to how terrible that graveyard match was and how bad this was as well.
Bad. I hated every part of this.
But that's why it needs to be discussed, because the hallmark of this WCW pay-per-view is how terrible it is. And there's nothing that drives that point home more than this whole thing with Vampiro. We have a great line from Scott Hudson where he says, and I quote, let's do justice to what was an amazing graveyard match, unquote. That's great. Vampiro says, Del Torborg and Sting are both dead. The crowd's chanting, we want Sting, like you said. The lights are way too dark and way too smoky.
Yeah, you can't see anything.
We have this long period where, like, it seems like 10 guys in druid robes and Sting masks carry out a coffin. The lights go out. Ostensibly out of the coffin comes Sting. Then the lights go back out and the coffin is open and Vampiro is apparently asleep in the coffin. And then Tony Schiavone just says, ladies and gentlemen, your winner in a coffin of the graveyard match, Vampiro. And then tells us that the mind games are just getting started. And then just to bookend this, because the only thing you can do after the craziness, the wackiness of a graveyard match, you do a jump cut to Gene Okerlund's face.
And Gene's back there with Goldberg. And Goldberg basically says he's going to win. And, you know, you could see a little bit of Goldberg attitude here. But, again, I didn't think much of it. Just regular old, more of a subdued Goldberg promo. But I didn't really think much of it. Russo comes back out. And here we go.
Oh, yeah. We get Scott Hudson saying, oh, boy, this is Vince Russo, the boss.
Yes,
not Vince Russo, the character.
And so Hogan doesn't care about this company. Hogan wants to use his creative control to beat Jeff Jarrett.
This is what Vince Russo is saying, by the way. Vince Russo grabs the microphone and starts saying these things.
Hogan got his wish. He got his belt, and he went home. Russo says you will never see him again. The belt is now the Hulk Hogan Memorial Belt, and there will be a new WCW belt, and it still belongs to Jeff Jarrett.
Well, at this point, or at some point, it might have been right around this time, Tony talks about the fact, I think it was Tony that brings it up, that the real world title belt, the real big gold belt that Vince Russo is holding has a dent at the top. And
It
that's
was
how
like
Tony
bent
knows
a
it's,
little bit at the top.
yeah, he knows it's a real belt. And that the belt that Hulk Hogan had that was used earlier on was like a replica fake version.
He will defend it tonight against Booker T, who's been busting his ass for 14 years and could never get a break because of Hulk Hogan.
But here, by the way, Booker T, who lost just about an hour ago to Positively Canyon,
Is going to get
now
the
in
title shot.
this new era of WCW that Vince Russo is saying he's ushering in here, where it's all about like competition and guys that can go. He's rewarding the man who lost to Positively Canyon with a surprise title shot here.
Makes fun of Hogan for being bald, tells him to kiss his ass, and walks out. This entire thing it was like an homage to a lot of the wrestling with shadows and Montreal screw jobs with the creative control, and you've got the birth. It had a lot of the homage to the birth of the ECW title in the way that he was talking about.
Yes, you're talking about the classic angle where Shane Douglas wins the NWA title tournament and then throws the belt down, declares that dead, and declares himself the Extreme Championship Wrestling World Champion.
So there was a lot of homage to all of those things here.
This was all, like you said, though, this was all about this. In a lot of ways, this was the almost 3-year culmination of the entire wrestling industry being completely obsessed with trying to find a way to recreate the Montreal screw job of 1997 to work the internet fans and create like this giant buzz. And there's not a single time that it worked.
No, the internet fan base, while very vocal and very into was the Vince Russos of the world were paying very close attention to their feedback. It was not a sample size of the majority of the casual fans. So
the money wasn't there. No. And not only that, it was very similar to what we talked about on the previous shows that we've reviewed of ECW, where they go into all this insider stuff. And the deal is, for people that really follow the business closely, that are into all the insider stuff, you're not going to fool them into thinking it's the stuff you're doing here is real. And for everybody else, they don't care. And this is just bizarre and stupid to them. So what are you accomplishing?
So let's talk about real life. In real life, WCW is, in the actual Hulk Hogan contract, not allowed to do anything that would besmirch the name of Hulk Hogan without his permission, which is more than just spelled out creative control of finishes, but also basically allows him control of all of his programs. This anti-Hogan promo by Russo, it made him popular with the younger wrestlers who hated Hogan and blamed him for their lack of push and lack of success. Hogan turns around, he files a lawsuit against Time Warner, WCW, and Vince Russo for age discrimination and breach of contract because his contract stipulated his character couldn't be defamed without his permission. Hogan would eventually win part of this lawsuit and lose another part in the case. In 2005, so 5 years after this incident happened, the court determined that Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, as Bollea acknowledged, everything that occurred at the July 9th event was scripted. Russo never mentioned Bollea, only the fictional character Hogan. Further, according to Russo's affidavit, he made this speech solely as his on-air character to advance the storyline and thus to lead into the final match of the event between Jarrett and Booker T. The trial court concluded that the statements could not reasonably be understood as referring to Bollea, and Bollea has not presented clear and convincing evidence of actual malice. However, the court did find that his contract was breached and he was owed his contract payments. So those 675,000 guaranteed appearances, he was going to get paid for those. But basically, they couldn't prove that this wasn't part of the storyline because all of the storyline going into this made it too hard to follow for someone to decide what was real that Vince Russo was saying versus what was part of advancing the storyline. So that lawsuit was thrown out at that point.
Just imagine, this is 2005, 4 years after WCW died, and WCW and its storylines were still too confusing for an impartial arbiter to be able to make sense of them and properly award a judgment or make a judgment.
So at this point, we have Nash versus Goldberg. And this is the first time I'm realizing that Goldberg is a heel. They did a Goldberg heel turn?
This was horrible. They did a Goldberg heel turn. If you remember,
I had blocked this out of my memory completely.
The whole thing leading to the Goldberg heel turn was that Eric Bischoff had been promising for weeks that he had like the biggest news in pro wrestling history to announce. So everyone thought, is WCW, is there a sell? Did they somehow like poach away, a big WWF wrestler to be able to try to turn the tide in this war that was basically over at that point? And instead, when the time came, the big news was that Goldberg was turning heel. That was the big angle. The video, it did a good job of explaining something that should have never been done, turning Goldberg heel. I will say the one thing that I thought was good from a logic standpoint in this heel turn, while also, again, acknowledging they should have never done it, was that Goldberg hates Hall and Nash because, A, they were the ones that took his undefeated streak away at Starrcade several years earlier when Scott Hall tased Goldberg to help Nash defeat him. And then Goldberg says all Hall and Nash have done is basically try to kill WCW since they got there as the outsiders, yet the fans cheer for them. That's what made Goldberg turn against the fans. He then says that he's going to take them out and that the blood will be on the hands of the fans. This should have never happened, but I thought Goldberg did a really good job here talking about it.
I think he did a good job. Definitely shouldn't have happened. Goldberg was still a huge star.
And
everybody was on their feet for Goldberg.
Had.
Yes, everybody was on their feet.
What was the deal, by the way? So they have this video deal of Nash walking in the back toward the ring. Scott Steiner is standing up against a wall as Nash tries to tell him to come out and help him, and I don't understand what's going on. Are we to believe that Scott Steiner is like pissing in the corner of the building?
It could be that. It could be fellatio. Could be a lot of things. Yeah. It's left to the reader to determine what was going on. But yeah, basically Nash was like, "Hey man, you got my back," and Steiner's like, "Yeah, whatever," and this was great.
We then get, and I know we need to move this along, but another Tony Schiavoneism here is he vacillates from being great to terrible throughout this entire show.
Yes.
He says, as Kevin Nash is walking to the ring, Tony starts talking about, and I quote, all the cool buzzwords that the outsiders came up with in sports entertainment.
Too
unquote.
Sweet.
And then he lists out, he's like, the survey, too sweet. And he lists out all these things and then says that that's part of why Goldberg hates Kevin Nash. And then Mark Madden talks about that the reason that Kevin Nash hates Goldberg is because Goldberg takes wrestling too seriously. Tony Schiavone then starts talking about essences. As one of them, I can't remember, maybe it's Hudson, like admits basically these are stupid reasons for men to hate each other, but they do for these reasons. And then for some reason, Scott Hudson calls Goldberg, and again, this is a direct quote, the hired gun thug life. This is after Tony Schiavone calls Goldberg the human cyborg, which is obviously what they were like going for, the branding of Goldberg at this point. But why does Scott Hudson call him the hired gun thug life?
Oh, I hated that. I hated them calling Goldberg the human cyborg. That's incredibly lame. I hated all that.
It was completely unnecessary. Everyone already knows that Goldberg is a killer. You don't need to give him a name.
No, he's just Goldberg.
He's Goldberg. That's all you need. Then Goldberg comes out through the pyro, and he has Scott Hall's contract stuffed down his trunks. And then he tries to do his like faux MMA shadow boxing through this pyro. and then the contract like starts falling out of his trunks and he has to grab it really quick. That amused me. Also, sorry, another Tony Schiavoneism. Tony says, another quote or near direct quote says, "No document has ever held more importance in wrestling."
Now, I saw in the video package before this match started, I saw Goldberg eat this contract.
Yes, which was awesome. So I guess he made copies, is what we're led to believe. I don't know.
So if you can make a copy, this document is not that important. This physical document.
Yeah. Yes.
WCW in 2000. So Nash works over Goldberg in the corner. Quick comeback for Goldberg. He flips off the crowd. Nash chokeslams Goldberg. And now
Tony Schiavone loses his mind at this point. Tony Schiavone, just to set the scene here, Kevin Nash, who not that much earlier than this, I think back in 99, still was the booker of WCW for a period of time, which was almost as bad as Vince Russo being the booker. There are things to note here that I think are very Kevin Nash influenced. One is that Tony Schiavone is selling Kevin Nash like he is the most inspirational underdog babyface that has ever existed, just screaming about how he can't believe that Kevin Nash can withstand this punishment. He's such an inspiration. This is incredible. The other thing that's noteworthy is when Kevin Nash starts fighting back after Goldberg is working him over in the corner, we hear the heat machine, the fake crowd noise comes on louder than ever, and it's just sounds of women screaming. And I 100% believe that Kevin Nash told the truck to do this at this point in the match. 100% believe that.
Scott Steiner's at ringside, and he's fake cheering on Nash. Everybody can feel that he's out there for no good. They keep calling Goldberg the human cyborg, driving me nuts. Nash collapses, giving a side slam on Goldberg, and it looked
terrible.
like he was hurt. I'm like, did he just blow out his knee or something?
I thought it was the Kevin Nash quad injury from Raw a couple of years later happened here as well. This was, it was weird. And this is a side slam that I think he has executed in every match he's ever done, going back to the Vinny Vegas days, if you listen to our second episode of this show.
Goldberg tries a spear, but Nash sidesteps it. He hits the buckles. Both men are down. Nash goes for the powerbomb, but Scott Steiner attacks Nash. Spear by Goldberg on Nash.
At this point, Tony Schiavone starts screaming, completely unhinged, screaming about how much more does Kevin Nash have to overcome. It was like, I don't even know. It was like someone had attacked his family member. He was just apoplectic.
And then was it Hudson yelling about like, can he get him up for the jackhammer? Yes. And I'm like, I've been watching Goldberg jackhammer the Big Show, the Giant, since 1997 here. Like,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think he's going to get Nash up. I'm not really worried about it. Jackhammer on Nash for the 3 count. Goldberg wins, rips up Hall's contract. Steiner puts Nash in the recliner, which is still banned.
At this point, Tony is sounding, and again, keep in mind, Tony Schiavone was the announcer for WCW, the play-by-play guy. When the NWO took over, when Hogan turned, Hall and Nash came in, and Tony was like the ultimate WCW cheerleader, like the guy who was just so bent out of shape about what was going on. Tony here sounds like he's going to cry about the fact that Scott Hall is gone now, and that means we'll never see the Outsiders again. It's like total bizarro world. And again, I'm not blaming Tony Schiavone as my criticisms of him here. He does his job well. It's just what they are having him do is terrible. And then at this point, we have Goldberg and Steiner leaving together as apparently
celebrating
some like two-man power trip that I have zero recollection of.
4 minutes, 21 seconds.
Oh my God, that felt a lot longer.
Yes, for what would have been the main event if the Hogan stuff didn't go down, right? So Jeff Jarrett versus Booker T for the WCW World Title. Michael Buffer does intros again.
Kind of. So Michael Buffer gets paid by the Let's Get Ready to Rumble, and so here he does a very first he says we have been witness to one of the most amazing nights in the history of professional wrestling, sports, and entertainment. And then he just, in a very subdued way, says, let's get ready to. And then he goes into Rumble. Like, they clearly paid him for 1.5. Let's get ready to Rumble. This is how he did it.
Yes. If he gets...
and then from here, Tony Schiavone tells us that he's been given a sheet telling him that Norman Cowder from San Diego won the MasterCard Play with Power contest and is here tonight with his wife. Cool.
So you can see how fired up Booker T is. It is all Booker early, and he's pumped up. It's super exciting to see, because you could see, just the, how intense and how ready he was for this moment.
Which is juxtaposed with, again, this, we're supposed to feel like the emotion of Booker T fighting for the world title, this man who's gone 14 years and never won the world title. And then at the same time, we have Jarrett coming down the ring. Mark Madden can't remember whether Jarrett is still the champion or not. Then Tony explains that Jeff Jarrett laid down for Hulk Hogan, but this one is for real. Also, Tony says anyone who purchased this pay-per-view didn't expect this. Agreed.
Very true. Truer words never spoken. So Jarrett and Booker fight amongst the crowd.
Into the same one crowd spot that they're apparently allowed to go in. This is the point I referenced earlier, where right before they go out to the crowd, and now we lose all actual live audio. We have the announcers, we have the fake crowd sound. We don't have the real crowd sound, and we don't have the sound of guys taking bumps.
Jarrett throws Booker into the announce table, back around ringside. Jarrett gives Booker a pile driver on the announce table, and the table does not break. This was so brutal.
Oh, God, yeah. It was so brutal, but then 30 seconds later, Booker is back. They're back in the ring, and Booker is hitting a comeback.
Yeah, back in the ring. We've kind of been glossing over how bad Mark Madden was and how unsufferable he was all night.
Saying things like smoochy boochies.
Here's one for you. This is athleticism, not politics, to decide the title. Ugh.
There are so many things on this show where the announcers are begging you to remember that professional wrestling is fake and telling you to not get emotionally invested. We have, at the same point, I think right before Mark Madden says this, we have Scott Hudson saying he's beginning to think Jeff Jarrett might be the right choice for the world title. Again, telling us that wrestling is fake. Then, immediately after that, Tony says how badly both men want to win. Talking about it like it's a real fight. Immediately, the next thing that is said is what you just said. Mark Madden saying that this is about competition, not politicking. Telling us that everything else that we saw earlier was maybe fake.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Jarrett with a figure 4 attempt. He gets rolled up for a small package, long 2 count.
Yes, I thought this was the finish because I remembered
so
Booker T winning, but I didn't remember the finish, and I thought this is what was happening here.
Jarrett is able to lock in a figure 4. Booker reverses his way out. Booker with an axe kick, spin-a-rooney, spine buster for a long 2 count again. Another good near fall.
At this point, this is a very good match.
This is a great
by the standards of what we're seeing on this show, this is awesome. Like, Booker T is great. Jeff Jarrett, whatever you want to say about him, and I never was a huge fan of the guy, but he, in the right situations, he could go, and he was going here.
Jarrett hits a low blow, brings a chair in the ring, puts it in the corner, just like Canyon did earlier, and then the announcers bring it up. They say, hey, this backfired on Canyon earlier, and it will backfire on Jarrett. Yes, it does.
Before this, though, we have my favorite Tony Schiavoneism, or his favorite comment of the entire show. So referee Billy Silverman takes a ref bump. I don't remember, like Jarrett throws Booker into him or something. And Tony just blurts out, again, a direct quote, "Wrong way, Jones." I lost it. I had to pause the show because I was laughing so hard that like my face hurt, tears were about to come out of my eyes. I could not type my notes on my iPad. This was, oh my God. Tony Schiavone is a great human being.
Jarrett beats up the ref, gets the guitar. Booker catches him with the bookend, gets the win. Booker T wins his first WCW World Title. The people celebrate, and you legit had to feel good for Booker.
Absolutely.
This was a good moment for him. You could tell it really meant something. And when you talk about all the fake stuff trying to be real, when real moments actually happen in wrestling, it's noticeable, and this is one of them for Booker at 13 minutes and 40 seconds.
The sad thing, though, is as we're seeing that, and as you're saying all of this, it's absolutely true. The crowd's going crazy visually, but what we're hearing is the canned crowd heat. We're not even hearing the actual crowd. You can tell the difference. I also just have to note, again, Tony, there's one point very late in this match, Tony starts screaming about how both men are bleeding. And I'm looking really, really closely. There's not a drop of blood coming from either man here.
So we've poked fun at Tony Schiavone and some of his Schiavone-isms here during this show. But I do want to say, Tony Schiavone and Scott Hudson, they gave it their all in this match to make this match feel important and to try to save whatever this show was. And I think those two did a great job. It was exceptional in this match. I thought Booker and Jarrett did a great job. All four of those guys, I want to make sure get their due for this crazy night, getting that match done, and getting that type of emotion across. So good for them.
I would agree 100%. And again, like I said, my complaints with Schiavone were, again, directions he was obviously told to go on this show. He was great at what he did, even though a lot of it was ridiculous on this show. And yeah, I would imagine that Tony Schiavone is a guy who had been with Booker T for pretty much his entire career at this point in WCW. Tony Schiavone understood how big of a deal this was for Booker T, and Tony clearly wanted to make this as much as he could, make this match seem like a huge moment for this guy. They knocked it out of the park in this one. And you actually mentioned to me, Jeremy, as I was texting you about how terrible this show was, that this is in fact regarded, at least at the time, as WCW's best pay-per-view of 2000.
Absolutely. That was the feedback, that this show was things were on the right track after some bad shows.
Good Lord. Again, I guess perspective, if you've been watching WCW regularly at that point, this, I guess, felt like a breath of fresh air, but
let's figure out a best match for this show, because this is going to be tough. So best match for you, I'll let you think about it for a second.
Yes, thank you.
I will tell you where I stand. So I thought Steiner and Mike Awesome was actually the best match until the finish. I thought the Booker T Jeff Jarrett match was second, but it had a real good finish. So, and I also liked the Cruiserweight title match. I just wish that we had more, less Orange Cassidy-ish Juventud and less shenanigans in the match. So I'm gonna say, for me, I'm gonna say the best match was Steiner and Awesome. But because of the finish, I'm gonna say my favorite match and the best match on the show was Jarrett and Booker.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. Listening to you lay it out, and that's actually what I've been struggling with since we watched this show before we started recording. Agree on all three of those matches, but yeah, I mean, to me, you have to go with the one of those three matches that ended the right way. It was a world title match. It was a guy who deserved getting the world title, should have probably gotten it a few years earlier. And like you said, all four, outside of Mark Madden, the four principals in the presentation of this match did a great job. So yeah, I'll go with Booker and Jeff Jarrett. I will go with, for my worst match, unequivocally, which seems crazy to say given a lot of the terrible things we saw in this show. Unequivocally, I will go with the Hancock Daphne match. That was one of the most embarrassing things I've forced myself to watch in my time as a wrestling fan. And yeah, at least Torborg, at least the Demon and Vampiro was terrible, but it was so campy and there were so many things to legitimately laugh at, even though they weren't meant to be funny, that I got something out of that at least.
So this is a hard one to choose between, because knowing that was pre-taped and this is what they chose to air for that graveyard match. That makes it extra horrible. And
valid.
And everything about it was so terrible. To win the match, you had to come back to the arena. This whole thing was completely insane. I hated that match so much. I hated everything. There wasn't. It wasn't even a match. There were more spots with David Flair and Crowbar wrestling terribly in their underwear than there was of note in the graveyard match. So for me, that graveyard match was inexcusable. Hard no. That's my worst match. And with that, we are going to wrap up this show. This one
Would you recommend anyone watch this show? I honestly struggled with that as well, because if you have anything else to do with your life, don't. But if you are looking to parachute in to, let's say you didn't watch WCW back then. Let's say you're a younger fan and you want to know how and why WCW died and what went wrong. This 2 hours and 50 minutes will be a neat, tidy, and incredibly infuriating, confusing way to get a little bit more understanding, I guess, on that.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Any feedback you have, send it to us via Twitter, social media. All the links are available at wrestlingatrandom.com. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Definitely. Thank you, Jeremy. I have my fingers crossed that we get something better for next week's show.
The randomizer giveth and it taketh away. It owes us a good one on the next show. And with that, I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.